let's go for a ride. All the way back to 2003. The third, and at this point final entry in the Lord of the Rings franchise, is The Reigning King at the box office. Into Club by 50 Cent is the biggest song of the year, and the top-rated shows on TV are CSI, Friends, Joe Millionaire, ER, and American Idol, respectively. We're not talking about these shows today, though. Rather, I want to focus on a short-lived TV show that you wouldn't see on many chart-topping lists or Nielsen ratings reports. I mentioned the most popular pieces of media from 2003 because it's important to contextualize the TV show we're about to discuss with the era that it lived in, the early 2000s. This was a pre-Weinstein ousting, pre-Me Too, and pre-Netflix era, and cable television was in the blossoming stage of its quote, golden era. Mega-hit TV shows like Weeds and Dexter, both Showtime originals, were just about to arrive and birth the future of primetime cable television. These shows would have a heavy hand in shaping the trends, topics, and even approach that networks would take when entering this golden era of television, which it's been argued we remain in to this day. But this was a few years before all of that really blew up. Weeds and Dexter began airing on Showtime in 2005 and 2006, respectively. However, in 2003, Showtime was not perceived as a premium cable channel with water-cooler-worthy TV shows. Showtime as a network did not have the exclusivity nor the prestige of premium adult content. The reigning king at the time was, of course, HBO. In 2003, the home box office network celebrated the arrival of the fourth season of Sopranos as well as the third season of 6 Feet Under, and both shows would earn multiple Emmy nominations for those very seasons. 6 Feet Under was nominated for a total of 53 Emmy Awards over its entire run, and The Sopranos was nominated for an unprecedented 111 Emmy nominations. The industry could feel the tide shifting. Our culture no longer perceived television as the lesser-than medium. Big-name actors were making the move to small screen and getting praise for it, and Sopranos lead James Gandolfini was rising to the A-list stardom through a TV show. This was new for Hollywood. Showtime, on the other hand, had only small TV shows with limited exposure. Queer as Folk was, up until this time, their biggest hit, but being a TV show that centrally focused on queer characters, it was dubiously relegated to the niche category of television, even if it was, in fact, virtually identical in form to its deeply heteronormative and less broadly minded counterpart, Sex and the City, which was a critical and commercial darling for HBO, of course. Queer as Folk pulled good ratings over its 5 seasons, certainly enough that it kept the lights on, though it was nominated for 0 Emmys over its 83-episode run. Sex and the City was nominated for 54 Emmys, by the way. But in 2003, Showtime released the first season of a series that did not go on to earn staggering Emmy nominations, land on the top of the Nielsen ratings, or receive unwaveringly critical praise. In actuality, this show is not part of our collective culture. It's not a common title we hear in our lexicon of endless popular TV shows. It doesn't star actors that were made famous by the characters they portrayed, and none of the actors really went on to later commercial success. Well, one. This series is truly a moment in TV history lost in time. It's a television show that I first saw when the pilot aired 18 years ago. And truthfully, it was formative in my early days as a writer, as a filmmaker, and a lover of great TV. Today, we are discussing the lost legacy of the Dead Like Me franchise. We'll talk about the history of the franchise from its conceptualization by showrunner Bryan Fuller, who departed from Dead Like Me after only 5 episodes after some interference with script and story on Showtime's part, more on that later, as well as some tumultuous cast shakeups, most notably the reactionary firing of a key cast member. Now, disclaimer, this video does include some mild spoilers, though most are from the pilot. With this particular video, I don't want to spoil any major plot points as I want it to be fresh for those who are new to this series or those who do not very clearly remember the series. Truly, I want this video to, if anything, buoy people's interest in the franchise, such as it is. Dead Like Me was an American television series that ran for 29 episodes from 2003 to 2004 on Showtime, though this short 2-season run would not be the last incarnation of the show. Our series centers around Georgia Lass, or George as she prefers to be called. George is a young woman plagued by her lack of direction and unwillingness to participate in life, work, friendships, relationships.
That's me. I'd say I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not. I excel at not giving a shit.
George is observant, sardonic, sharp, a bit of a pessimist, and sometimes smarter than her own good.
I certainly wouldn't have gotten as far as I have.
As far as that?
I beg your pardon?
How far have you gotten? It's not like this is a corner office with a view. Every day you have to find jobs for people, most of which are probably better than yours. And I bet they don't pay you much either.
So what did you do to piss Dolores off? She must have done something. She only gives this job to people she hates.
When she lays in bed at night, she remarks that she has no particular religion and doesn't believe in God.
When I was little, my mom told me Santa Claus didn't exist. Even though she didn't say so specifically, I just sort of assumed God didn't either. I'd pray for world peace, etc., and maybe even for a little guidance.
In the pilot, we learn that George recently dropped out of college, much to her mother's dismay, and has no current plans to start any career of any kind. George's mother, Joy, is a classic type A, stern and stubborn. However, she is also seen to be fiercely protective of her family, though she is sometimes quite pugnacious and overwhelming.
She's bitter because they told her she wasn't qualified to get a decent job. Want to know what I think?
Here we go.
You should never have dropped out of college. And I still don't understand why you couldn't at least finish the semester. You used to have friends. You used to be so smart. It's like you just gave up.
Clancy, George's father, is a literary professor and absent patriarch who is having an affair with one of his students. It's important to note here that Clancy was written as a closeted gay man, something that George would later have to come to terms with. Clancy's affair and sexuality are alluded to in this scene in the pilot.
Is a friendly hug between two men supposed to last that long?
By the way, if you're wondering whose funeral they're attending right now, it's George's. Don't worry, we'll get there. And finally, Reggie, George's younger sister, is given so little thought in George's vision that she appears as a floating pair of glasses at the start of this dinner scene.
And that's Reggie. She's 10. She's not really invisible, but as far as I'm concerned, she may as well be.
Reggie is quiet, curious, difficult to read, and often combative with Joy.
Keeping a dead animal in your toy box is something a crazy person would do.
I'm not crazy.
She is going through a lot, though. More on that in a minute. Reggie makes a habit out of hiding in her sister's room and watching her sleep. In the pilot, Joy arranges for George to start working at the Happy Time temp agency.
You will get out of bed, and you will go to work. You will collect a paycheck, and you will move out of this house.
George muddles through the day at work, endlessly filing as her punishment for her attitude with Dolores. On George's lunch break, she's approached by a stranger who asks her name and then touches her before disappearing. Then, George looks up.
Aw, shit.
In the wake of the aftermath, George learns that she was just killed by a falling toilet seat from a space station. This will be one of many uniquely strange and quirky deaths we'll see in this show. Here she meets Reaume and Betty, who tell George that she is dead and has been destined to become, like them, a Grim Reaper.
Huh?
Hundreds and thousands of people die every day. Bodies are easy. Dig a ditch, light a match. But what about the souls? Who takes care of them?
We do.
Reaume, the father figure of the Reapers, is a remedy to George's pre-life relationship with her own father. Whereas Clancy was passive and uninvolved, Reaume is a constant presence in George's afterlife on Earth, whether she would like it or not.
What's the soup today?
Cream of bullshit.
And he is the rule-setting leader of this band of Reapers. His character is quite mysterious, and we learn nothing about his pre-life or past in the first season. Betty is bubbly, vibrant, sometimes forgetful, but often quite chipper. George takes a liking to Betty early on and questions if she can consider Betty as a true friend. We are also introduced to Roxy and Mason. Roxy is a fierce, hardworking, tireless, yet always tired Reaper. She balances her day job with her reaping better than anyone else, and is the unliving embodiment of the working stiff of the afterlife. And Mason is an eternally disheveled British ex-hippie whose death, drilling a hole into his head while high in the 60s, says most of what you need to know about his character. Still chasing that high, even in death. So George, now being an official member of the crew, has daily duties of reaping the souls of the living before they are killed. This gives great way for a host of wild, imaginative, and stylishly choreographed death scenes, and some very touching moments as well.
When I was little and my parents would go out and leave us with a babysitter, I would sneak into my mom's closet, press her dresses to my face, and breathe her in as close as I could. But there's one smell I didn't realize I'd missed so much. My own.
George's journey through the afterlife is entangled with the living from her past, and Season 1 explores George's journey of learning to let go of her living family and fully embrace the joys of afterlife. Critics praise the show for its style, its performances, and its score. And oh boy, can we just take a moment to talk about the score of Dead Like Me.
You got a middle name?
Fuck off, would you?
Does it start with an L? You better hurry, George. You're gonna be late.
The show is scored by Stuart Copeland, formerly of The Police, who has also scored some of my other favorite childhood pieces, including all of the Spyro games. Season 1 of Dead Like Me earned modest ratings and overall positive reception, though critics were less kind towards the show's lead character. Now, this is completely opinion territory, but seeing as my favorite TV show characters as a teenager were some version of this personality type, I can only wholeheartedly disagree. Georgia Lass is complex. She's intelligent, analytical, emotionally intuitive, and compassionate. She's also brooding, unruly, sarcastic, and sometimes ungrateful. You know, all the hallmarks of an 18-year-old. Remember that her character was 18. Critics also noted some plot inconsistencies, especially after Fuller's exit by episode 5, most notably the sudden departure of Betty. So, let's talk about what happened with Rebecca Gayheart. In 2001, Gayheart was driving in Los Angeles when she swerved around a car that had braked in front of her and struck a 9-year-old boy who later died from his injuries. Rebecca Gayheart was sentenced to probation, a 1-year suspension on her license, and also settled a wrongful death suit with the child's family. Said Fuller, her leaving the show was because the studio executives had second thoughts. Because here's this woman who accidentally killed a child in her past and is now playing a Grim Reaper. They got uncomfortable with that and told me to let her go. She's great on the show and everyone thinks she's great on the show and everyone likes her as a person. I went to the mat for it and it got really ugly. It was the only one of the battles that got really ugly. Rebecca Gayheart spoke about this incident for the first time in 2019. I did not cope very well after, she said. I just didn't want to live after that accident. That's what it came down to. I couldn't handle it at all. But Gayheart's demanded exit was just one more decision that Bryan Fuller could not abide. So, let's talk about Fuller's exit. Though he created the show, Bryan Fuller left early into season 1 because of conflicts with MGM Television, including what was characterized as disagreement over major script and storyline cuts considered important to the main theme. Fuller stated that the lack of professionalism made it really difficult. It was like being at war. They were constantly trying to strong-arm me. It was the worst experience of my life. According to Fuller, Showtime canceled the show due to a loss of quality and a sense that the problems would continue. Bryan Fuller, an openly gay man, was also quoted as once saying that he'd worked with producers who didn't trust his casting, particularly of women. Bryan alleges that a producer once told him that Fuller doesn't know how to cast, quote, pretty women. This comment is not only appalling, but it's yet another reminder of the times. The hardships that this uniquely beautiful and singular show had to endure was emblematic of its era. Would this show have gotten a season 3 if it were a Netflix original? What if it was an Amazon Prime show? Would fan letters of support bring it back for a big special like Sense8 or Gilmore Girls? Well, as it turned out, the fandom's love for the show extended well beyond the internet, with petitions for revival reaching MGM Studios. And so, in 2009, 5 years after its season 2 finale airing, MGM released the direct-to-DVD film sequel, Dead Like Me, Life After Death. Now, I said I would keep this overall spoiler-free, and I aim to stay true to that statement. So I won't speak too much about this film or its plot, but I will say this. It was a massive letdown, to say the least. I was right in the thicket of the Dead Like Me fandom after its cancellation. I myself signed many of those petitions and scoured message boards for hints of a revival. The day the announcement finally came, I was indescribably happy. MGM had listened to us and we were finally getting a continuation of this beloved little series, but with a few major caveats. First and possibly most important, no involvement from Bryan Fuller whatsoever. That alone was a red flag. Second, Mandy Patinkin, who portrays Reaume, opted not to return. The word was he read the script, did not like it, did not like that Bryan Fuller wasn't involved, and decided not to participate. And honestly, I have mad respect for that. Several other cast members either did not return or were not written into the script. they didn't even include their Waffle House. On a side note, this feature was also shot in Montreal rather than the lush and dynamic scenery of Vancouver, where all of the original television show was filmed. The result is, regretfully, an aimless, paint by the numbers, and inconsequential story that feels joyless and lackluster and overall unimaginative. And so, with 2 seasons spanning 29 episodes and 1 direct-to-DVD movie, we have this mixed franchise lost in history. But I will always remember it as one of my first true TV loves, and the unknowable ways that it shaped my approach and vision as a filmmaker. Thank you so much for watching my new video. I know it's been a little while. I hope it was informative. I hope I was able to introduce some people to the Dead Like Me franchise. I also hope I was able to refresh the show for some people who hadn't seen it in a really long time. I love this show so much. It's one of my favorite shows, so I just really wanted to talk about this lost legacy. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram, it's @k.reaume. If you'd like to check out my short films, hey, there's a playlist for that in my YouTube. But for my next video, we will be talking about the Alien franchise. So look out for that. Until then, I hope everybody has a great week. I hope you have some fun. I hope you have some rest. I know I will be, and I will see you all very soon. Bye. This video was brought to you by ExpressVPN. Go to expressvpn.com/KyleReaume to find out how you can get 3 months free.